What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode.
And there's seasons, right? Like we have seasons of growth and seasons of contraction where, the leaves fall off. We're not always in this state of like, reach for more, reach for more. And if we don't have the deep roots, then when the leaves fall off, what happens? Like nothing good. Yeah. Like, adapt or die, bro. Like,
such a good
it's one or the other. And so I heard this, when people refer to like their dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
And how they often refer to it like when I had my dark night of the soul, and it's like this one-time story. I have had several. Like I've had several dark nights of the soul. And that's always what I think of too. Like that's what I was thinking of when you were talking, where it's like when you're explaining all those concepts so beautifully is we are designed to expand and contract and go through seasons and those dark nights, and it's not just one. You don't just like have like this like, wow, shit's hard. And now I just can see and now my life is going to be easy. Like, no, it gets harder. Yeah, that's a fantasy. And in fact, it gets harder because now you have all of these tests that are going to come up to help you practice. To help you practice being in alignment and help you practice what you now, quote unquote, know, and so it is, we have several of those, those.
I think I have one once a month, like 3 days before my period. I just talked about this in my my magic of your moon. I'm like, like 3 days, it's like so timely. I'm like, oh, yep, here we go. I'm like, literally laying right there crying. And I talk about this in Project Lioness because you guys are with me for like 4 months. So you get to see me in all my chapters and phases. Yep. But it's so true. Like, I think there's this, again, this is part of the fantasy of like, once I overcome this, like everything's going to be good. Right. I'm like, no, there's just new opportunity to expand your capacity. I don't know who posted this, but it's like, things don't get easier. And there's a lot of different ways you can apply this, like lifting, for example. The weights don't get lighter, you get stronger. Challenges don't get easier, you just widen your capacity to expand into whether it's a somatic sensation you can't be with, which then can turn emotional, which then can turn mental. Like most of this stuff Alex and I are speaking to her is definitely like learning how to recalibrate your nervous system, which she talks quite a bit about, or has at least in the past. Maybe you're doing it in other forms right now. I love your content on that stuff. But yeah, Thanks. Shit doesn't get like in your perception. I think it can get easier, right? But like the truth is you simply just widen your capacity to deal with shit, Like, I think, again, I see this in entrepreneurs too, where they think like, oh, once I get over this, it's going to be easier. I'm like, no, it's just, you just like the thing that used to trigger your nervous system is now just part of the journey. You're like, yeah, I saw that bear in that cave before. Like, let's fucking go, bro. Yeah. You're just like,
I know how to deal with that one.
Yeah. You become the little lioness cub and then you just learn to hunt. And then you learn to nap better too, right? This, what Alex and I are speaking to too, is like not just go, but you learn how to actually relax into like your bigness and not feel this like, where am I rushing to? Like, where are you rushing to? Right?
I don't know.
I can resonate with that. And I know my mom listens to this podcast. I love you, Mom. But she would agree. Like, she never sat still. Yeah. So I have to like, if I have like 3 hours of space in my calendar, I'm like, oh, I can just like, I can just lay here.
Am I
It's okay.
allowed? Yeah.
Right.
I have
And
to like
that's
give
like,
myself permission to do it.
bro,
You are allowed to do this. You're an adult. You're 33 years old. You're a mom. You're married. You're a doctor. Like, girl, you don't have to ask permission from nobody.
dude, one of my clients and I were talking about that. She was like, I think I've been like living into this, like, I still think I'm like a teenager at times. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you need to like expand into your womanness and be like,
Yes.
fuck yeah, I can lay on that sheepskin rug next to my fire for 10 minutes. Who am I asking permission? Like, hello.
Right. Yep.
But
Yeah.
it's such a recalibration. It is such a recalibration of not only like our parents' values, but like the culture, right? The hustle
Mm-hmm.
culture. And listen, there is a time and place for uh maybe not hustle, but there's a time and place when you're in a hunt mode. You're like, yeah, let's fucking
Mm.
go, right? There's a time and place for that. Just like there's seasons, like there's a season for summer and there's a season for winter. So,
Yes. I was thinking about when you were talking about how things that were hard are no longer hard, but that doesn't mean things won't aren't hard anymore. The
right.
hard just kind of changes. And I was thinking about being a parent and how in the beginning it's really hard because it's very like physically demanding because your sleep's all fucked up. Your body's not yours, like you're healing, like you're like, what even day is it? Like I'm waking up every 2 to 3 hours, like my boobs
Yeah.
are doing something weird, like, and is it right? Like all these just questions. And then now, fast forward 2 years later, it's like the hard, it's not any easier. It feels easier in some ways because obviously her sleep is a lot better and she can communicate more and it's more fun in a lot of ways because she is able to just do more and be more. But the hard now is because of those things, her meltdown, she's having tantrums and
Mhm.
meltdowns because there is communication issues. Like she wanted something and I didn't give it to her in the right way and I didn't understand. And then I did give, she wouldn't come get it. And so I was like, okay, I'll bring it to you. And that wasn't right either. I didn't bring it in the right way, right? And so huge meltdown. And so there's like communication barriers and just all things that go along with that. So it's a whole different type of hard. And I know that will continue forever.
Yeah. Different challenges, right? When they're
Yeah.
teenagers, like choose
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is we've got to choose our challenges. And if our
Mm-hmm.
challenges can link to things that fulfill us, we won't dip into our brainstem as much, right? We won't feel like we need to go into a tantrum because we're just like, all right, yep, this is life. There's a
Mm-hmm.
polarity of life. There's a dichotomy of life and a duality, and it's learning how to dance between all those moments and among all those moments.
I've had to adopt this two things. One, I've had to adopt this mantra of like, I am unbothered by this. I'm unbothered, especially when she is having like a full-on meltdown, especially if it's in like a public place. Um, for simple things, like she's trying to like jump off of something that's like 5 feet high. And I'm like, for safety, life saving reasons, this cannot happen.
Yep.
Um, and so in my head, I'm like, actually, I think I've even said that out loud. Like, I'm unbothered by your feelings. I'm here for you.
Right.
Like,
Like I'm here
I'm
for
here
you
to hold the
and
space. You're
yep.
not going to ruffle my feathers. I got you. It's all good. I'm
Yep.
unbothered. I'm the calm in the storm.
Yep.
Um, and then I had this download. I was in a yoga class and I had this download kind of based on what you were saying just now about how when we have, it's actually, most of us here live like pretty soft lives. And when I say soft, I mean like we really don't have that much to complain about.
Yeah. Privilege
And
for sure.
therefore, when something bad happens, quote unquote bad, we can feel really, really bad about it. And I was thinking of this in relation to Georgia, where it's like, of course, me peeling her banana wrong is the end of the world because she has nothing to complain about.
Yep.
Like for her, this is the end of the world. It is the end of the world. And how dare that happen? Like, how dare I do that incorrectly? How dare I forget she wants this bowl and not the plate? Like whatever the case. And then I applied it to us as adults, and I was like, dude, like that is so us.
Yeah.
And living in that kind of limbic system, amygdala, like that's all brainstem type thinking, right? Where we're just on that hustle, survival, autopilot, not super conscious. And then I was like, the antidote is bringing your prefrontal cortex online, which is gratitude, right?
Yep.
To then recognize I am so upset and flip it into gratitude for I get to be upset about this.
Yeah.
Not
Because
not like bypassing your
yes.
feelings or not throwing positive toxicity on it. Like you shouldn't feel that because people have it so much worse. No, no, no. Feel your feelings. Like it's okay that you're super pissed that they got your coffee order wrong. Like that's
Right.
okay. And also gratitude that like this has ruined my hour. That this is the only thing I have to complain about right now.
Yeah. Getting your Starbucks order wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you brought that up because that's been something that's been on my heart and my mind lately is like the ability to be able to utilize these methodologies to feel your body, feel your emotions, kick back on your prefrontal cortex. Simultaneously, I would agree there's so many things in the at least modern day culture that our brainstem perceives as a tiger, which is not actually a fucking tiger. And if you have any sort of cultural consciousness and you've traveled anywhere else in the world, you get a big wake up call of like, holy shit. What I thought was a problem is, and again, this is not comparing people's traumas. It's not comparing whatever, but there is different ways of living on the planet. And something I always am reminded of is when I went to Haiti and I did some work, it was interesting to see and feel their spines in comparison to Americans.
Mm.
And just, they have their own set of challenges. And I was like, but oftentimes their bodies actually felt okay because their stressors were just very different.
Mm.
Like, all right, I got to go walk this way to get food. I got to go walk this way to get water. Versus in America, it's like, ugh, he didn't put, the extra vanilla shot in my Starbucks. And listen, I'm not here to judge your vanilla shot. However, I think it's okay to check yourself every now and then because it is definitely a privilege to be able to have these methodologies to apply to ourselves so that we can actually transcend that and serve humanity in a different way. And that's what I'm up to is like, how can I continue to reach the people who maybe don't have the financial resources, but have the willingness to do the work?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my
Mm-hmm.
mission is like, how do I bring this to more than just, you know, I have really expensive programs and then I have free shit. And it's like, I just want to serve people on the planet. But
Mm-hmm.
it's important to, like you said, not bypass, like if you're upset about your vanilla shot, fine. And how can you like have gratitude for the moment as well? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I think that's important to speak to.
It's like that, what we were talking about earlier, just like juggling multiple things that can be true all at once.
Yes.
That's really become important for me because
Which
being
requires your higher brain.
which requires your higher brain. Yeah. And it's hard because like being the default parent who is so like the preferred parent, she wants me, right? For like just about everything, like
Mm-hmm.
99% of things. And I also in my head am juggling all the plans, all the providers, all the appointments, all
Mm-hmm.
of the what she needs, what she does, who takes care of her, like all the things. Me, right? And then most of the stuff in the house is me. So it's a lot and it's okay. I'm not complaining. That's how we've created it. But we have capacity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot to juggle. Plus and then I add on like stimulation. It's very easy for me to get, you can get hyper and hypo stimulated and
Yep.
just so then I just get overstimulated in specific ways, and a lot of it's her needing me, touching me. And she's loud. Like she's been that way since she was born. She's just an intense human and I love her so much. And so it can just be a lot. And then at the end of the day, it's like like my nervous system is so, I'm full that then it feels very significant when something goes wrong, or
Yes.
when the TV not working is a direct attack on me right now, like
Fuck.
yeah, like why are you doing this to me? Like this light just turned red. Why are you doing this to me? I'm already running late. Like, of course, why me? Like all of that is so real. All those thoughts are so real. So it's not to say anything like that, like, oh my gosh, people have to get their own water in Haiti. Like,
Mhm.
yes. And I'm also like, why is this light turning red right now? I don't have time.
Yeah.
Um, and so it is. All these things are all true. And we're all humans and just doing our best to continue to recognize, okay, time to take a deep breath,
Yeah.
time to do some nervous system work, bring myself down, assert my needs so I can have some help,
Come back to our
do all the
center.
thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a like, I think a continuous thing to reflect on, catch yourself and have the emotion, like you said. Oftentimes I feel when you actually feel the true emotion of like anger or rage or frustration or sadness, it can pass relatively quickly if you are able to allow yourself to feel it somatically versus like thinking it and getting stuck in like, should I feel this way? Sometimes I ask in the office, like, what are you noticing? And someone will respond like, well, I think. I'm like, no, 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 no. What are you like feeling? What are you sensing? And they're like, oh, I feel pricklies in my chest. Right. And I think what you're speaking to is like, how can we start to expand space and time to like, widen, we've been saying a lot, widen our capacity to feel in our body more, even at the end of the day as a mom or an entrepreneur, when things feel like they're full, even still just allowing that one moment. And listen, if you have a moment of like rage or like fuck you TV or fuck you light or whatever, that's okay too. And the both and is such a beautiful place to be, honestly, not like this or that, this but that. It's like live in the duality and experience that for a moment. Like you can have grief and gratitude simultaneously. You can be pissed and grateful simultaneously, right? It's a trippy experience, but I think that is the gift of being human too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. If being motherhood has taught me anything, it's how real juggling two extreme things, opposing things are simultaneously, and how true they both are
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Mm.
Oh my gosh. It's like, I think that's why things became so obvious to me too in closing my practice, is because it was like, it was just like I'm feeling so many things, so that all this other stuff just becomes obvious. It's like I don't have time. I just don't want to. I don't have time. Like that's just not. I can't spend my time on that. It became very clear what where my values were, and what I wanted my energy to go towards,
Yeah.
because of just all these polarities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's important to
Mm-hmm.
consider is like we have one human life, at least that I know of it. I know it, unless you get reincarnated into another human, let me know. So we are living into this existence that we are conscious of. And eventually there's an endpoint. And I talked about this in a previous podcast. If you listen to Linds's podcast about embracing death in life,
Mm. Lens.
yeah, Linz is a Lioness
Yeah.
graduate too. If you guys haven't listened to her episode, it's very powerful, as is this one. But eventually we're going to transition. And what you do and what you create on this planet, like you've got one shot. So why waste it? And I think birth or other forms of, you birthed a practice and then you allowed that practice to transition and you guys are birthing and helping, your other business grow. Like you've got a shot. And yes, you can pivot, but you also don't know when you're the dash, right? Like on your tombstone, I'm not going to be buried that way, but you know what I'm saying?
No.
You know,
Me either.
like eventually there's going to be an endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It could be tomorrow, it could be 30 years from now. And the beautiful thing about having your prefrontal cortex is the ability to have a vision for the future, and simultaneously that can keep you trapped in the someday. Like, oh, I'll do that in 30 years. You may not have that. Like, tomorrow may be your last day. Today may be your last day. So how are you choosing to expend your energy in space time? And if your number one priority is to be present with your daughter, with your kids, working on your business, serving your clients, fucking do it, man. Otherwise, the universe will have a way of getting you to wake up to it,
Yes. It's so intense. I know that can feel really intense to hear, and like it's super intense to talk about. And probably because that's like the biggest common denominator that every human has.
Exactly.
There's
We all gonna
that's
die.
literally whatever, we all came out of a vagina, like you said, and we're all going to die. Like those
What
are
we know to
the
be true is vulvas and death.
yes, like though that's kind of it.
Yep.
It connects us all. And dude, like
We come out of the void and then back into the void.
that was the coolest thing about birth and doing it
Yeah.
naturally. I had Georgia at home in my bedroom, kneeling on my bedroom floor, 4:22 a.m. And I got to tangle in that spirit world. I was not present in reality.
Woo!
And dude, that's the truest thing ever. Just like, what are we doing if not what we feel we were put here to do? And if we
Yeah.
don't quite know what that is, then figuring it out. Like figuring out what we're called to do. I've gotten onto this whole road just in Georgia, and it's got me, I feel like I have all this new permission to do things for myself because I want different things for her. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so like looking into all these different types of school and unschooling, and just like, what if she like didn't even go to school? Like, what if I just saw her talents, which are already apparent, and just like fostered the shit out of them. Like, and then when if she wants to like own her own business when she's 10, she's gonna need to read. She's gonna need to learn how to read. So like she'll probably be inspired to do that versus me like
Right.
trying to force her to learn phonetics and
Yep.
and phonics, when she's 4 or 5, and she's like, just memorizing, but not actually
Not
learning,
actually. Yeah, exactly.
not
And I know
learning through
you're,
play and inspiration.
yes. And you're
And
definitely a person to talk to about that, by the way. Like, with
mm,
your additional training and brain development, there's definitely like a push to learn things at an age where maybe the brain isn't fully ready. And I think there's a lot more people in the culture being like, maybe I want to stick with play. Like, play and socialization is like the name of the game, the first many years of life, versus like you got to read. And it's like, are you actually reading, or like you said, just memorizing?
totally, it play and attachment, right? Which sets the foundation for who we are as people, because we can't actually learn unless we are confident in an identity. like like we feel secure that we belong somewhere to someone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're in a survival state 24/7, and you're only learning how to be alive, how to please, how to, you know, not die, kind of is what it is.
Like, I
We
hope
don't
I
ever
get the A
access that
because I
higher conscious.
memorized. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's why learning through play and socialization, and just learning all that, having that emotional foundation, that security, helps us develop self-worthiness and confidence and a growth mindset, and that's really what we need too in order to learn anything, is not be afraid to fail, or not be afraid that we're not going to be perfect. Of course we're not going to be perfect. We're learning, but so many of us
Mm-hmm.
don't even try because we don't want to not be perfect. We don't want it to be hard or whatever the case, right?
Our brain, the soil of our like lower brain structures hasn't been, at least in the traditional educational system and the traditional way of upbringing, hasn't allowed, and I don't even mean traditional. Like, when I say traditional, I'm not talking ancient, because it
Mhm.
used to exist. And then, we don't
Yeah.
need to get into how systems have played a role in collective
What the
trauma,
systems
but
are for.
yeah. But like, you gotta, I know, you and Dr. Aaron, my team doctor in the office, taking Dr. Amy Spolster's work and like tilling the soil, right? Allowing the lower brain structures to have a web of support and safety so that the higher brain structures are like, oh, now we can blossom. And like,
Yes.
I have the courage and ability to pursue this because I know deep down, like I have a strong sense of self-security and self-worth. But I think we just kind of shove kids through, and we see this in the office where these kids are coming in and they're super like intellectual, but they have no somatic awareness, or they have all these retained primitive reflexes, or there's all these disturbances in their physiology. And yes, they're like super intellectual. It's like you're talking to an adult, but it's like, dude, you're 3. And it's just really interesting how we've kind of bypassed or rerouted. And we don't see this until sometimes later, where it's like, oh, we skipped some of this. And I think Amy Spolstra said it, where you don't grow. Traditional doctors will say, oh, they'll just grow out of it. No, they don't grow out of it. They grow into it. And you may not see it until like later down the road, where all of a sudden, like, they can't be in a relationship without, just running away all the time. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know we're like all over, but I think all this really comes back to like the human lived experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now you're talking about what sets us up for a good foundation. And yeah, I always tell patients it comes out sideways. Like you don't ever grow out of anything. Like it's always going to show up. And sometimes that's in kids, we can have high intellect, but then when we're not connected to our body, then that's when you get a typical like ADHD diagnosis, right? They won't sit down, they're impulsive, they're constantly sensory seeking, or they have sensory processing disorder. I call it alphabet soup. ASD, SPD, OCD, ADHD, ADD, like and all the symptoms overlap. They all have overlapping symptoms because we have a dysregulated nervous system, and no kind of like you said, we're missing the primitive reflexes aren't integrated, or we also often don't have experiences as an infant. How do I want to say this? How do I want to articulate this? A nervous system will get dysregulated whenever its adaptability, its processes are overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
And so then we have certain things that parents are either ignorant of, or they just, and that's not a bad thing. We just don't know.
We're
And
not
we
taught
don't have
this.
right. And then we don't have certain, we don't take them to certain providers like a chiropractor or a PT or an OT or a speech therapist or whatever the case until there's something wrong.
Right.
Where what we do know, what all these providers know, that when there's something wrong, we could have intervened way earlier, right? And so my goal was always to help parents understand that you are your child's foundation for success in how you respond to them, how you love them, how you show up for them. And going back to just us being okay with relaxing and being slow, and just like, that's perfect. Do that. Just let them live life with you, not in a hurry, crazy, fast-paced way, but just like let them go for a walk outside. That's great. 2 thumbs up there, right? Pick them up when they're crying at any time. Just because they're crying at night doesn't mean that you shouldn't respond to them, because you would respond to them during the day, right? Like the night's no different than the day. I've never understood that. Why we just like expect them not to cry at night. They're going to cry at night for a long time, for years. That's just how that goes. And then at the same time, have providers, people in our community that we can go to help us deal with these problems. Like I'm a huge fan of integrated healthcare and having multiple practitioners so that I know who to go to, who to go see, who to ask questions to. Most people, they just have we have our pediatrician and we go at the proposed schedule, and it's like, but like, why is that the only doctor that a kid goes to see? And what do they just weigh, and measure their head. But like, you as a mom know, like, oh, like, first of all, your intuition is everything. Like, you know if something's wrong, and you know if things are going right. Like, they're eating, they're peeing, they're pooping, they're relatively happy. Like, why do we need all these other quote unquote percentiles and things like that when it's like physiologically they're doing great, and we have all these other healthcare providers that could actually help us with that
Looking at the whole,
proactively.
right?
And
Looking at the whole.
At the whole, exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
dentistry, like I think even holistic dentistry, they've done a great job at like checking things out before you have to have a root canal. And the same thing goes with like your baby is like not going in because something's wrong, but just, prevention and just getting checked and seeing them as a whole, not just like you said, a weight or a percentile, like my child's in the 99th. What the fuck does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, yes, there are trends to like development for sure, but at the same time, like, what about all these nervous system phenomena that, sometimes people aren't even checking at your, general practitioner, unfortunately.
And they're not because they don't know how. And it's the same, like we show up to these well visits, and babies vast majority of the time are okay in the percentiles, right? And so then what happens is they're like, well, are they sleeping in their crib? Are they still eating at night? Oh, well, they're 6 months now. So, they can go in their own room and they don't need to eat. They just are manipulating you. They just want you to pick them up. So you don't have to do that. And it's like, wow, that is the most archaic parenting advice I've ever heard. And first of all, why are you offering unsolicited advice when the mom didn't even ask? Like, what she's doing, she may be very happy with what she's doing. And now she may feel she even needs to lie to you because she likes sleeping right next to her kid in a safe way. Because there's safe ways to do that. Or she likes having the crib in her room. She doesn't want to move the kid into his or her own room, right? Like, and so then they're offering unsolicited, outdated advice, and we're going to them for neurological issues when that's not their specialty. So it's like, man,
that's a whole nother, I think that probably would be a whole nother episode, Alex, is like the sleep, because that is and maybe you're seeing this more. I think that's a very controversial topic right now, unfortunately.
Are you seeing it in practice?
I don't see it as much, but I have had other colleagues or people I coach talk about it who dive more into that world, is like, what, sleep training versus not, or co-sleeping versus not. And this goes back to like people injecting their values versus like, what if we came back to our intuition as moms, right? As women. I think that'd be a really valuable episode for you to come back on and like really dive deep into that. Cause I know you've had your own journey with Georgia, like navigating that. And I think it can be hard as a parent. Like you can hear all these things and then that overrides, like you said, your intuition of like, where do I feel most coherent with my child?
Yep.
Right. And like, I don't really know if there's a right or a wrong way. Is there maybe a more coherent way? Perhaps. Is there a more connected whole way? Probably. And I think you and I probably share similar perspectives on the whole sleep thing and co-regulation thing. But it's interesting to see some of the people that I admire within the profession like get a lot of backlash about talking about some of these things because it goes outside the paradigm of the old model, like 1950s, 1960s. It goes outside that model that, again, has it worked? Perhaps, but what about these things that are showing up down the road, right? If we look at the whole archical perspective of the human experience and all the chronic disease that's out there, we've got to start looking at these things from a different vantage point, because the way that we're choosing to look at it is not working, in my opinion. And
I agree.
It is absolutely served. Like that paradigm, medicine, it serves when we need it. I'm not saying get rid of it, right? I don't want to be the person that's like, fuck you, medicine. Like I'm anti-medicine. It serves when we need it. And we've got to consider another paradigm here because the trajectory of the human experience and the human race is going in a very interesting direction. when it comes to health and vitality on the planet.
Yes, couldn't agree more. I would be more than happy to dive into that. And it's a topic I'm super passionate about.
Yeah. I'm
Super
also
passionate
realizing
about.
I didn't plug in my computer, so I'm going to plug it in right now. I was like, oh shit, I
I had
got
to do that too.
8%. Which, hold
I
on.
had to do that too. That's funny.
Are you going to share something? There
Oh,
we go.
I
Now we're
was just
plugged in.
saying it's a topic that I'm super passionate about because it is just as equally important for a mother as it is for a child.
Mhm.
And how we are changing our own brains, right? I think it's one of the most interesting facts. A human is born with only like 25%, I think it's 25% of its brain um like online. The rest is
Mhm.
kind of like blank space, like
Yeah.
whiteboard space.
It's got to grow. Like
Whereas
neurogenesis has to happen.
whereas like a zebra, for example, is born with like 75% of its brain done because they've got to be ready to run if a
Yep.
predator should come, like immediately,
Yeah.
right?
Like you're born like, oh shit.
Right. Like you're born, they're born more developed so that they can survive. Whereas just humans, we're born way less developed because our survival mechanism is our caregiver. It's a person.
Yep.
That's how that is evolutionarily how we were meant to survive. Therefore, that attachment, that bond that we create with our primary caregiver is what keeps us alive. That forms our entire brain. And
Yep.
by 3 years old, our brain is then 75% developed. There's not a whole lot to do. That's how much development happens between 0 and 3 years old. And it's all largely based on how we're being responded to from the person we have designated as our survival person. This is the person that's going to keep me alive.
Which is wild.
It's wild. And so most of the stories, most of the coding that's making up our brain is coding that they talk about subconscious. We're completely unaware, you know? And
Yeah.
so then when we're not being responded to, or, we're just being straight up ignored, or we're being responded to harshly or aggressively or whatever, we're picking up all these tension patterns. And again, you don't even know, but it's being written into your DNA. And this is
Or,
how I love getting into like the generational trauma,
mhm.
like the ancestral trauma. And that's probably a whole other podcast episode, you know,
Alex
but
is going to be back 10 times this season. Get ready.
my point is that we talk about it for kids. I would love for more moms to know that with the whole sleep stuff, your brain's neuroplastic too, and it's changing constantly. And the massive hormonal shifts that happen birth and postpartum, it's changing at a rate that it hasn't changed before. And so when we're consciously ignoring the cries of our baby, which is research has proven gets us into like fight or flight. You hear your baby crying, you're going into fight or flight, and you're consciously turning off, I'm not going to respond, or I'm not going to whatever. That codes things in you. Like you are intentionally ignoring your somatic intuition. So what kind of things are you setting forward? What's the trajectory you're putting yourself on going forward when we do things like that for ourselves?
We have to look
I don't know
at,
the answers, but
right.
it's an important question.
Yep. It is. And when you ask a different question, that opens up the opportunity to receive a different answer, even though you might not know it in the moment, right? Ask a different quest ion. You know that. My question to you in this is, and I see there's like a skyrocketing rate of moms dealing with like postpartum depression and anxiety. And I just wonder how much that is involved of like, well, I was told to just cry it out, let them cry. And I've had clients who were adopted or who were literally thrown in a room to cry it out. Like this is maybe back in the 70s, but like their parents would just throw them in the room and they would just cry. And then eventually they wouldn't cry. But the not crying isn't actually often falling asleep. It's going into a freeze response where they're like mobilizing energy, fight or flight, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And then it's like, I've exhausted enough energy. And then it's like, whoop, we go into freeze mode. And it's not them falling asleep. It's them actually passing out and going into freeze. And My question to you is, what about the if I play devil's advocate for a moment, what about the people who are like, well, I don't want to coddle my child. Like, I don't want them to become dependent on me. I don't want them to become, attached to me. And I have my own like physiological answer to that, but I'm curious, like, how you navigate the people who have the fear of like, well, I want to really raise an independent child or something like that. Like, how do you respond to that as a holistic provider?
Mm. We can't have independence without first having dependence. And that again is written into our evolutionary DNA. Like that's how we're born, how we survive is to be dependent on someone. And from my own personal experience and from how I've coached people through this is whenever we allow that dependence, because we are now we've created a secure attachment with our kid. Now my kid gets to go be independent because they know they can come back. They know they'll be responded to. They know that they'll be taken care of, which allows for courage, like we talked about a second ago.
Yeah.
It allows for courage and exploration and creativity because they know that they have a support, they have a
There's a
safety net.
foundation.
There's a foundation there. Whereas if we are saying, I don't want to coddle them, I want them to toughen up, I want them to be independent. I don't know of any 15-year-old that likes to sleep in their mom's bed. I don't know of any 15-year-old that still breastfeeds. I don't know of any 15-year-old that like, would rather hold mommy's hand and wants to like kiss her goodbye in front of his friends in front of school than like go walk into school. I don't know. Like it's natural growth. It's a natural human growth pattern. They're going to be independent regardless of how you set them up in the beginning. Because
Right.
that's just what happens. Like, we're not going to breastfeed forever. We're not going to sleep with mommy and daddy forever. We're not going to want their hugs and cuddles and kisses forever because that's we just grow. We just grow.
Right.
What the difference is are we setting them up with confidence and self-esteem and self-worth and identity and belonging, or are we setting them up with potential anxiety, perfectionism, overachieving, not knowing how to
Hyper.
not what was
I
that?
was going to say hyper independence or hyper dependence.
Yes, because what we learn whenever we're thrown in a room because we're in trouble, I'm crying and so I'm in trouble because I'm crying, or I'm having a tantrum and therefore I'm in trouble because, go to timeout, I'll talk to you when you're calm, or don't talk to me like that, go to your room, whatever. What I'm learning from that is that whenever I have these feelings, it's too much and I need to I need to be alone. So now I'm having to like be forced into isolation with all these really big
Mm.
feelings. And if they're too big for everybody else, and they're also probably too big for me, and what am I supposed to do with that?
We go
So
to
we're
addiction to navigate the emotional charge.
exactly. So we're setting them up. We're kind of setting them up for failure in a lot of ways. Well, quote unquote, I turned out fine. Yeah, but did you really? Like, if you could like imprint your life on a perfect little child, would you be okay with that? That's what I think about all the time. Like, I turned out fine and I did. But if I had to pass on all the shit that I deal with to my kid, would I do that? No, I wouldn't.
What's your
So
standard of fine, right? Like
exactly.
fine is not thriving. I just had that conversation with I was telling my grandma I jump in lakes and cold plunges, just a side note here, and do sauna. And my husband and I, it's a great experience we have, and there's a lot of benefits to it. And she's like, well, I didn't do any of that, and I turned out fine. I'm like, Grandma, your husband, I don't know if she listens to this. I love you, Grandma, but her husband is on like 10 different medications. My grandpa is
Mhm.
dealing with a lot of health shit right now. And I love him dearly. He's been an amazing man. And like, what is our standard for living? And like, what is
Mhm.
fine to you? I would
Yeah.
question that and say, what is fine to you? And
Mhm.
are you open to thriving
Mhm.
and being okay with that and not being ashamed of thriving as a human species?
Yep.
So that's a great, I mean, to I would also agree with what you said is like, um, I know you have more to share, but I just want to like pinpoint this because I think it's important. And what you're sharing is maybe this is another question you can add to. Do you think that our infatuation as a culture and our fantasy of independence actually creates more dependence of human beings on people or systems?
Mm. Do
Like
I
we
think
have a
our
fantasy of independence and like I want an independent child. And our fantasy of desiring independence actually creates the opposite to balance us out, i.e., the dependence on certain things, where it almost becomes like a, I don't want to say an issue, but like a balancing act where like we've had such a fantasy of independence as a culture where now there's like a hyper dependence of things on the other side
yeah,
because we have a fantasy of independence, you know? I don't
I
know.
get
That just came into my mind.
yeah, I can absolutely see how that would play out because the fact is we'll have a natural capacity issue. So the more independent we want to be, the more, which kind of means isolation. It kind of means not
Yeah.
sharing, you know,
Being in community.
not being open to help. Yeah, being open in community and receiving help, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
offered, right? No, I don't need help because I'm proud, I'm independent, you know, whatever. And so naturally, your your body's right. We always talk about like it's the universe is going to show you you need help. And like my husband's story comes into mind. He's been ultra independent his whole life. He's dealt with a lot of what we're talking about on this podcast. And he's been dealing with some health issues, you know, that have really made him slow down and be open to receiving help in a way that he hasn't ever before.
Breaking the fantasy of independence.
Yeah, and what exactly that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are social creatures. That's also in our DNA, you know. We were meant to be in connection with each other, to be witnessed and to be held and to live in community. We weren't meant to do it all alone. And so I think, yeah, I mean, having infatuation in this image of like I don't even know what that looks like. I'm gonna have all the money in the
The
house and
American
I'm not gonna
dream.
need anybody. I'm
Yep.
not gonna answer to anybody, you know, whatever the case. And it's like, okay, well, you're gonna be a slave to something
Mm-hmm.
because that's not how that works. You're gonna be a slave to your job or to a spouse or to money or to your addiction
Yep.
that the money brought you
Yep.
or to like whatever the case, right?
What is
Um,
I know Dr. Alok talks about this, Dr. Demetrini, but like the more you infatuate with freedom, the more chaos you actually create.
that makes sense.
Because the only way that you get independence is actually through discipline. And I think what you're speaking to
Yes.
is how do we transcend codependency on not just
Hmm.
people but things, right? We can
Yeah.
have codependent relationship with food. We can have a codependent relationship with social media, right? But like
Hmm.
how do we transcend codependence to like coexisting and
Hmm.
co-regulation where like I am sovereign and autonomous in my being and certain in who I am, and I can coexist with you and love you even if we have different values or different perceptions. Because I don't need your validation to exist, but I can love and appreciate who you are. And like you said, that community type of experience that I think we're all deeply like our biology is longing for, but we don't know how to do it.
Hmm.
Right. Or we haven't witnessed it enough, or we don't trust it enough because we've been betrayed or abandoned or these things.
One of my favorite, oh, where did I read this? I don't remember. It might have been the Body Keep Score. Um, trauma comes from people, right? Trauma often comes from people we are in relationship with, most often.
Yeah.
Therefore, the antidote, the healing also comes from being in relationship with people.
Yeah.
And we naturally have massive resistance to that because of exactly what you said, right? No way. I'm not gonna get hurt. We got all these protective mechanisms now. I'm
Yeah.
independent and I'm free and I don't
I'm
need
going to go on
discipline or
a
structure or
self
to
development.
yes, what right?
Uh,
Whatever the case. And the fact of the matter is you can't fully be free unless you are in relationship with people because that's how you heal.
yeah.
That's how you heal things, you know, and it might start with like, okay, I'm paying to go see this chiropractor. Okay, I'm paying to go see this therapist. These are the only people I can trust right now. But through that, right, then you begin to live your life in a different way. And that's my favorite thing with somatic work is on the outside, I think you mentioned this too, on the outside, it can look the exact same. It can look the exact same on the outside, but the inside is very different. The internal motivators are very different, right? It's a subtle shift in I'm not on this diet because I am trying to control my anxiety, or like I'm trying to like restrict food because I'm so concerned about what people will think, but I am just not eating this one ingredient because I've noticed that I can think better when I don't. And I love
Different
myself.
intention.
Yeah, I love myself enough to just withhold from that and have the discipline to do it, because it allows me the freedom to then actually go do this hobby I've really been wanting to do, or like
That's it.
go have the courage to go to the book club that I didn't have before. Right? Like it's kind of wild how that stuff works, but that it's very
Yeah,
quantum-y,
it
but
is.
that's how it works.
It's the perception, right? You can be driven by motivation all the time. Like, oh, I need to get motivated. I need to be accountable. Or you can be magnetized by inspiration. And you choose, right? Sometimes you need the motivating factor, which is oftentimes running away from fear, which can serve in a moment. And, what's to me, what you're speaking to, I think, is just more sustainability in being pulled by inspiration from
Mm.
within, which you need a lot less accountability when you're
Mm-hmm.
actually inspired by your life. Maybe
Mm.
people reach out to me, they're like, I need accountability. I'm like, no, you just need to connect to what you're inspired by. Then, like, my ass does not need to check in on you. Like, I don't need to parent
Mm-hmm.
you as much. Accountability can serve. Like, I do that in coaching, I do that in Project Lioness. And I'm not here to like slap your wrists all the time. Like, when you're truly inspired by things and you see the value of your own self-worth, you don't need someone checking in on you all the time, because you just wake up and you're like, let's go. Like, I see the purpose, I see the vision, I see the mission, and I see it so clearly. And I'm so inspired to just spontaneously take action where I don't need anyone holding me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think accountability can serve at times, but if I constantly am needing an external reminder, is it something that I actually am inspired by? Just something to check yourself. Dang, my phone died.
I think it's a cue for the self-sabotage cue.
Yeah.
I think the higher accountability, if that's something you hear yourself say, like the higher accountability you need, I would invite you to look at where you're self-sabotaging in your life, because I think those two things go really hand in hand.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you need it.
And it's like, do you need accountability or do you need community
Mm, hmm.
to be
And permission,
connected?
yes, yeah, permission to change your mind when you learn new information that you already have.
Right.
Maybe it's just information that you need to say out loud. Like me to you,
Yeah.
whisper it.
I think that's how us projectors come to conclusions. I think is just speaking. I have a client like that too. I love his ability to discover his own solutions. And it's honestly just speaking it. And through the
Mm,
speaking, there's an arrival of like what is known within, which
hmm,
is really
hmm.
cool.
You and I have definitely done that on the phone
Yeah.
several times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't actually need advice from you.
Yeah.
I just needed like a soundboard to process and be like, I fucking got it. And
Send you a
that's what
4 minute long voice text.
yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm loving Project Lioness, I think, is becoming more and more, is just a space to reflect, and a space to like come back home to what you've known to be true this whole time,
Mm,
and not be told. Sure, there's new content and wisdom and ways of thinking about things, but that's one of the tenets I hold, is like, I'm not here to really tell you guys what to do or share uh like what I think you should do. I'm here to help you, guide you through a process of self-discovery where by the end there's a deeper knowing of like, oh, right, I got it. And like, Mel didn't tell me, no one told me, I found it, which is so powerful to go on that journey.
absolutely. Project Lioness is all about providing the framework and the structure in order for that to happen, you know? And because, yeah, it's the learning is, it's as much as it's learning, like a new language, and just about things we say and about things we think. it's an unlearning of what all of it means anyway.
That's, we definitely start with that with like, all right, so we're gonna unlearn. And people are like,
Mhm.
huh? Like, I'm gonna
Yep.
unteach you
Yeah.
everything you thought was actually true to you and help you
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
unveil what's
Yeah.
actually true. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that,
It really
Alex.
felt like a lot, like, because I've, done traditional therapy. It's been helpful for me. I haven't done it in a long time, but it takes a long time. And it really felt like traditional things that a good therapist would help you uncover, but it was on warp speed. It was on warp speed and it didn't feel like we were talking, like it's inspired, like it's inspired, and you're doing it in community, so you're learning every single time and you're being witnessed. And I think it's really powerful to be just affirmed in what you're going through, and also things that other people are going through that are so relevant for you that you wouldn't even realize, and it's like, oh my gosh, well, I just got my answer and I didn't even have to talk.
Yep.
Like, how nice is that?
It's that
And
powerful.
because it's a framework, there's always a topic. There's a topic, like you're guiding us through certain things. So I found that really helpful too. Because sometimes it is, for me, I have so many thoughts and it's like, well, where do I start? How do I
Yeah.
even begin to unravel this? Because one question just leads to another one, leads to another one. And so that is what I found really helpful too.
Mm.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm excited to lead another cohort because the synchronicities and the growth that I experienced was huge. And, things that I didn't even know would become alive within me. And as you're speaking to, the synchronicities are pretty powerful. Um,
Hmm.
I love that. Is there anything else? I know we've been going, you guys,
I
for
know.
like
I was like,
over
we
2 hours.
probably got to wrap up. Before we wrap up, there's one
Yeah.
thing I want to circle back on, just to note.
Yes. No, I told
When
you
we
like that we could just keep
were,
jamming 8 hour podcast
yeah,
all
we
day,
probably
baby.
would. Yeah,
We're
we
like, wait,
would
we're
and we
recording?
could.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm glad
Um,
I'm getting the image on Zoom right now because my phone died. He did.
she did.
He did. Okay,
Um,
sorry.
no, I wanted to say, because we were talking about, when you were asking questions about like development, and we were talking about like cry it out and being fine versus thriving and like all that sort of stuff. I wanted to note that by no means do I think Georgia is going to be perfect and like never have trauma, because I've already reconciled the fact that I am absolutely going to fuck her up in ways that I don't intend. And we're all on that spectrum. That's a spectrum, right?
Yep.
And some of us, are way on one side, like lots of messed up shit from our parents, and some of us not so bad, right? And my goal is like obviously the not so bad, but I know she's going to be on that spectrum. And so what I really want to normalize for her as she's developing is not this idea that I'm like going to be like this perfect angel parent that is just like 100% perfect, because I'm not. I'm such an imperfect human, just like we all are. Oh my gosh. Is to normalize the resiliency aspect and the adaptability aspect, and the more importantly, the repair, because the resiliency comes when we're
Mm,
able to repair. And I think that's what we really missed out on, us millennials, was having parents apologize to us, having teachers apologize to us, having people in authority apologize to us when they knew they were doing something icky, or, you know, like my mom talks to me about it now, things that she wished she could have done different, or things, reacting out of anger when it didn't have anything to do with me. But as a kid, that's our development. We're egocentric. Everything has to do with me,
oh, yeah.
you know? And so normalizing apologizing, normalizing connection, normalizing um, watching her and having her watch Clay and I apologize to each other, trying to model what that looks like so that she
Mm.
can grow up knowing that that's normal. And if she's in relationship with somebody who isn't doing that, then that's a red flag. Because I think my goal for her is to grow up, to know herself, know that she belongs, to have her identity so that she has her confidence and her secure support system. She can always come home, and to know what a safe person looks like and how to be a safe person and how to support people and be in community and develop relationships and relationships that are meaningful, and to live with intention. And everything else is just kind of a byproduct of that. But that's the mission. She'll still end up in therapy.
Mic drop.
But that's the mission.
You can just send her to Project Lioness in like 20 years.
That's the goal. Yeah. She'll be a little cub. She'll be our first cub.
Yeah,
yep. She'll go see Auntie Mel. Auntie Mel will make it all right.
I will definitely be still guiding in 20 years. That would be fucking dope. Whoa, we just time hopped. That's so cool.
That would be fun.
Mic drop, first of all, that was like a beautiful way, I think, to wrap up this podcast. And I think for everyone, when we experience the fuck ups, it allows us an opportunity to reconcile and, like you said, repair, and learning what healthy repair looks like. Of like, hey, I realize I did this thing and I realize the impact it had on you. Let's move forward. Like, that's huge. That is huge to, like, in any relationship. Like, we just talked about completion. You talked a lot about completion. And I think so many of us fear the pivoting and completion because we haven't seen what a healthy completion can look like, or what a healthy repair when there's challenge emerge. And just, that's huge, Alex. So thank you so much for like sharing your wisdom. Like, seriously, mic drop. That was amazing and so pivotal for anyone, whether you have kids or not. Reconciliation and repair and being a leader I think one of the strongest characteristics in being a leader, in whatever form that is to you, is owning up and being humble. Like, hey, I realize my action, it impacted you. How can we reconcile this? Like, that's so vital and so important.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I've already tried, I tell her, I'm wiping your vulva. We're learning body positivity.
Yep.
And I'm telling her, you notice me getting loud. I know that scared you. It has nothing to do with you. I love you so much, and I'm sorry if that scared you. Oh, I'm going to take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
Just trying to normalize like anger and fighting and like reactivity, and like it's not anything to be scared of. We can take some deep breaths. That's totally normal. We can bring ourselves back. And also, I notice how that made you feel, and I'm sorry that it scared you, and we're okay. I'm okay. You're okay. I love you.
So when are you coming out with your course?
Oh man.
Podcast episode 2. Well, this will probably be 2. This will be the second part of our 2-part series, maybe 3. I think we'll be good with 2 parts.
2 parts.
Just, dropping in that little nugget of value I see you contribute to the world. Anything else you want to share, my friend?
No, thank you. Thanks for letting me capitalize so much of your time this afternoon. This was a
treat.
Yeah.
This is such a treat. Like I said, Alex is near and dear to my heart, and she inspires me and holds me accountable to my bullshit. So thank you for being a friend, a true friend that doesn't let me get away with shit, but also is there for, if I need to just have a moment. And I appreciate that about you and love that about you so, so much. And when am I going to see you?
That's a great question.
You coming to Minnesota when we do Coach Catalyst?
Oh, yeah. Wait, is that April? May. In May. Yeah, we can make that. I bet we can make that happen.
I rented an Airbnb for us, so you better be there.
No. Ooh, super fun.
No, side note, that's one thing for you entrepreneurs who want to go from like brick and mortar to coaching or consulting, or make the transition in a way that doesn't have as much chaos. Myself and Alex's husband Clay and our friend Steph Wagner, we host a Coach Catalyst cohort, and there's always a VIP day. So if you're curious, I'll drop that in the show notes here. And the VIP day will be in Minnesota this year. So hopefully we get to see you guys. And I know Steph and Kyle have their little ones. So it should be fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That's a great idea. That's when we'll come.
Book
it.
Cool. Let's go. All right. Anything else?
No,
any other mic drops? Thank you. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for tuning into this amazing conversation. I hope and know it brought you value today. We'll drop, well, by the way, how can people reach out to you?
Oh, probably the easiest way is in the DMs.
In the DMs on the
IG. Slide into the DMs at Dr. Alex Mosley. I'm sure Mel will put it in the show notes too.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Feel free to reach out to me. I am available, accessible, happy to help any way I can.
Yeah, Alex is an open book. She's very real about her story of parenting and motherhood and entrepreneurship and womanhood and all of those things. So thank you, Alex, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, you guys, until next time, peace, love, keep inspiring. Bye. Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.